So, what is something I would let make sure other international students knew before they went to school abroad is knowing that in America you do not have the social safety net that you're so accustomed to that you might not even realize. Like back home when I was in Nigeria, there was always this underlying current of there's always going to be family there to help us without us even thinking about it. There was never a day where I felt like I could be stranded in the middle of nowhere because family was just always there. And when you're in America, it really hits you that like there are people in America who kick out their kids when they turn 18. You are not safe. And nobody tells you about how like you are in America specifically. I don't know how it is in parts of Europe because a lot of times in different European countries they have a far more robust safety net. But in America, it's very easy for you to literally fall through the cracks. And I wish that we, if you're an international student, really try your best to build a social safety net, and especially with other people in the trenches with you. Like when we were in school, it was literally, we were each other's social safety net. We were the people who were there to support each other. So that's something that every incoming international student always has to keep in mind. Yeah.
I agree. I absolutely agree. If it weren't for like you, Liz,
Yeah.
Aja, like it would have been so hard. So hard. I don't think I could have gone through the program.
Yeah, I don't know how people do it, especially with the fact that like you're already in a new place. Like everybody in college is already in a new place. Then you add a new country, you add a new way of life. It's an almost impossible task that international students have been put in. But like if you know what you're there for, you just have to hyper focus on that and try to make your way through all the chaos of it. Yeah.
I agree. Also, it's also the hyper focusing is very key because I feel like sometimes when you're an international student and you're introduced to this quote unquote new way of life, you're introduced to this new lifestyle, or maybe you become friends with people that are very comfortable, right? And they kind of quote unquote remind you of home because you can see that they're very comfortable. They have their safety net, right? And so you're drawn to that. It's very easy to lose focus of like, hey, I'm here to get a degree and get a whatever outcome you want, right? Because you see these people that are very living very comfortably, not have to try as hard as you because they got mommy and daddy and they got connections and what. But you don't got mommy and daddy over there. Like it's very important to hyper focus because if you get distracted, you will actually, it's not gonna work out for you.
Yeah.
You're not like them kids. As harsh as it might sound, you're not like everybody else that you become friends with. You have to remember in the back of your head that you're an international student, and it's gonna be twice as hard for you, no matter
Yeah.
what you do, no matter who your friends are.
Yeah. I actually think that another thing that international students get wrong when they come over is that they think that as much like either they hyper focus on hanging around people who have similar backgrounds like them, or they maybe get lost in the sauce and hang out with people who are not playing the same game as they are. Well, the wonderful part about moving to a new country is the idea that you can explore and find out new aspects of yourself. So if I was an international student, I would not try to immediately, I would try to find my community, but not get stuck in it. Because what's the point of moving abroad to an entirely new country if you only hang out with people with the same ethnicity, same mindset, same everything? But you also don't want a situation where you're dealing with people who have no semblance of understanding your worldview. And I think that's why, like, as an international student, one thing I'm happy I did was not completely just stick with the African kids, but also to make friends of every different race and ethnicity. But I realized that a lot of times people actually do just stick with the people who they know because it's already such a difficult change moving abroad. Imagine having to explain like your culture and nuance to other people.
Yeah, and I feel like people that do that never end up far, at least in my experience, because your community is gonna absolutely. I'm not gonna discredit the importance of having your community around, but most of the time, like I feel like they're like a lost generation because it's not like they're in school. Like they're doing small odd jobs here and there, and so the longer you hang, at least I'm just gonna speak in my experience, but the longer you hang out with people that are in your community that are not students, right? That are like important, that are not students, the more you're gonna think it's okay to have that lifestyle. But that's not what you came there for. You came there to have a degree and move up in your career, in the world, move up financially, all the above.
Yeah.
And there's safety in having your community around, absolutely. But don't let it drag you down, I think is what I'm trying to say. Or
What
don't
you
let
said.
it stifle your growth.
Yeah. I'm also like, I think
Yeah.
people miss the mark when they realize that they could have a completely different trajectory by coming in as a student versus coming in as a family member. Because like you said, if you find a community of people who are like immigrants like you who are going through the same problems, but they are working those odd jobs, you could have a completely different trajectory as a student. You could get an internship, you could do so many other things. And so I completely agree with you that when you hedge for your community, try to actually find people who could also have the same trajectory as you're currently having. And as a student, you could basically move up one income ladder, two income ladders, basically, when you're a student versus when your time is actually preoccupied with work. Another thing about being an international student that nobody tells you about is how like your community expands. Like in Nigeria, maybe my community would have been my tribe, like I'm Igbo, but in America, my community was Africans. Like anybody, we all fit into this bracket. And then realizing that the weak ties you have in your country become significantly stronger when you are abroad is one way that you can just realize that your world has changed dramatically.
Yeah, yeah. Borders mean less. It's more about like, are we living the same experience? You can relate to me, I can relate to you. It's no longer like, oh, Chisom is Nigerian, Gaju's Rwandese. It's like, no, we're international students from Africa. Like, let's figure this out together.
Yeah, but
And I think it's a good thing because borders
yeah.
shouldn't mean that much.
Especially for Africans, when our borders were literally made for us and drawn for us. I watched a YouTube video where we talked about how, like, if you were to redraw Africa, how it would look so different. Because, like, I don't know how it is for you, like, in Rwanda, but, like, for me in Nigeria, there's so many people who are Igbo, like me, my tribe, but are not Nigerian. And I could imagine, like, a world where we would have been one nation, like, based on our, like, the fact that we're all one tribe. But those I don't even know if there's an African country where we're not just carved based on like foreign interests versus like actual shared identity. And it's so weird to imagine that because when you spend time in Europe, especially coming from America, America is this very race-centric thing. But then when you come to Europe and you see that everybody's like one race, like it's overwhelmingly white, you realize that like the average European does not identify as white. They're like Polish, Italian, French, British, and they don't even see, like, they cannot see the similarities between each of them. They are so different. And so,
Yeah.
like, for young Africans, realizing that, like, our borders are very stupid, are actually not very relevant, but yet a lot of people have been indoctrinated to think they are very, very important. And, like, I
That's
always
true.
remind myself, like, my father was born into a pre-colonial Nigeria. Like, he saw Nigeria's independence. And when you realize that, you're able to understand how like our worldview is very different from like the worldview of other people who had fought for borders, fought to separate themselves from other people. Yeah. Gaju, what would you do differently if you were to start college all over again? Yeah.
Honestly, I think I did college right. The only thing, though, is I never got to really enjoy the college experience, but that's because I always acknowledged from the beginning that I wasn't there to experience the college experience. I was just there to get my degree and you know do whatever I set myself up to do. So I feel like the fact that I stayed focused on that actually helped me a lot. I feel like if I was all about having the college experience, frat parties, all of that, it would have distracted me. And I don't think I would have liked that in the end. So honestly, this is terrible to say, but I don't think I would have changed anything. How about you?
What would I have done college differently? I wish we both did the 4-1 engineering program. That was a program where you try to get 2 degrees from 2 different schools, St. Mary's College and Notre Dame, University of Notre Dame. A part of me wishes sometimes that I only tried to get 1 degree and actually studied other things. Like I know trying to get 2 degrees allowed me to more easily transition into engineering because now I had like computer science on my resume and all of that. But sometimes I feel like I would have been a far more interesting and unique person if I hadn't tried to just get math and computer science. Like I had something else that just allowed me to be more different. And it's not just about being different for different sake. It's about like the fact that like when we were kids, you get rewarded for conforming, you get rewarded for doing the right things. But when you're an adult, you actually get rewarded for differentiating yourself. So I wish that I had actually spent more time differentiating myself, but I knew I had to take like the best path moving forward. And that was like the one thing I would have done in college differently. I'm very grateful that we had a small, strong community. Like the black kids actually just used to hang out with each other, and we were actually there for each other. We weren't all rich. Came from so many different backgrounds. So I'm grateful that like I had a community that was there to support me throughout all of it. But some days, like you said, I wish I had a little bit more fun, even though I don't think I would have enjoyed the frat parties. I actually went to one football game, one. And I didn't understand why Americans stood for the entire thing. But then I realized I had made a terrible mistake. I did not come in drunk. If I had come in drunk, I'd have been able to stand for 4 hours. So when I realized that I should have come in drunk for this thing, and I realized that's the only way you're going to survive, standing up and being half naked in the cold, that's when I was like, I sold all my football tickets, and I was like, I'm not doing this nonsense. So I don't think I would have enjoyed those things, but I just wish I had the privilege of doing them. Yeah.
That's fair. Okay, so back to the thing that you said, like, as a kid in Africa, you get rewarded for conforming, and then you grow up and you realize the world is bigger than Africa, and you actually get rewarded for being different. Do you think that do you not think that you still have time to differentiate yourself? I feel like what we do right now with the First Kids, or all of the other projects that you do right now, outside of First Kids, those are all things that you actively work on to differentiate yourself, and you can only afford to do it because you went into the path that you did, where you were able to become an engineer in 6 figures, blah 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 blah. Like, I think, to me, when I think about it, it comes down to the same thing. Like, you still have to have that, because let's say this whole entrepreneurship doesn't work out, you can always go back to becoming a Kubernetes engineer. You have that safety net.
No. 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 I don't know.
Okay, maybe not Kubernetes. Not Kubernetes. Right?
If I see an AWS console, I will fight somebody. You now see on the news, Nigerian woman attacks a Portuguese man on the street because of Kubernetes cluster. That's literally I'm this close to doing that.
My point is, you can always go back to being employed.
Yeah.
And earning a high salary, because you took care of the base. The base is there. Yeah. So that's all I'm saying.
And I do think there is something to it. I also, like, there are different types of safety nets. I hate the fact I had to build my own safety net, because some days you see like people like MKBHD, the reason why he was able to grow his YouTube channel was like the time where there was already a safety net for you, like college, and when you're like in high school, he started building like MKBHD. And I wish that I had not had to build my own safety net. Because anytime I'm not actively building, it's kind of like falling apart under me. But like, not falling apart, but like, I think you understand what I'm trying to say. But I think we should raise more African kids to learn to differentiate themselves. And as the world is actually becoming flatter, like the internet is democratizing everything, following trends will actually not be the future. It's actually going to be setting them. And I also think that like when you're a child, you automatically even have a default muscle to differentiate yourself, because you come out different. We are so unique, but socialization is like literally beat into us. Like you literally end up being socialized to act a certain way. When I lived in Ireland, there was a daycare beside me, my building, and it was literally called Safari Kids. And I was like, they named it that because kids are literally wild animals. Like they literally are wild as fuck. They don't care. And then eventually we domesticate them to become like reasonable human beings. So I hate the fact that like I feel like I'm relearning a muscle that was natural to me because of socialization. But I also do think that the thing about adulthood is you can't make excuses anymore. Like you're adult with a certain set of cards, and you just have to make the best out of your circumstance.
Not even as an adult. I think it's just part of the earlier you realize that the world is unfair.
Yeah.
The better you can actually take that power back and make it fair for you in your standards. Maybe it's like the fact that I've been in the US for the longest part of my adult life, but I feel like the whole, like acknowledging that things are unfair is okay.
Yeah.
But making it an excuse to not move forward in life is not okay for me.
Exactly. And I think another thing I really hated when I was in America was when I was telling people I had to leave because of immigration, their immediate thing was like, oh, I'm so sorry about like they did something wrong to me. And like, bitch, you didn't do anything. Like, but like another thing that I really hate about this culture where we make people apologize for their privilege. One, it won't stop the rich people from hoarding resources. They are still going to hoard it and give their kids, okay? You making every rich person be like, oh, they come from this privileged background. One, like I don't want to sound cliche, but everybody actually kind of has some privileges that they're able to give back to their kids. Like someone like Kanye West, his mother was like an English teacher, because of her like I think an English professor, and he was able to spend some years while growing up in China. Like even though like those things are a little bit different from the norm, they allowed him to probably shaped his worldview, that allowed him to be who he is today. And his mother did not give him $1 million, but she loved him and she taught him how to use his words and how to articulate himself, and she supported him. I think one thing I really hate about the current culture is this idea that always being aware of your privilege and always having to like do some form of penance around it. Well, they're literally the people who are not. There are people who are not even on the internet to have pen. Like those are the actual marginalized people in society, and raising a generation of people to feel to always
Like
discredit
feel
or raise
entitled.
feel entire fam. It's like it's not good to set people up to succeed. The disadvantages, the advantages, the unfairness of life is always going to happen, like you said. The goal is that like you should not feel discouraged, but you make the best out of your circumstance. And I know it's so basic, but like the internet is full of such basic advice everywhere. So fuck.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree. But anyway, to each their own. Maybe I feel like people might not agree, especially Gen Z.
Fam, I feel like some days, like I know I am just at the either I am like the youngest millennial or the oldest Gen Z, but these Gen Z kids, like they are wild, like they are feral. They're literally feral kids, and it's
But
wild some
actually,
days to see how their world.
maybe that's the outcome of differentiating yourself unapologetically.
Fam,
You
maybe
know?
that is. But it's so funny that you say this because I think one of the things that people don't recognize about Gen Z or Gen Zs and having a voice on the internet is that you actually don't have a voice. You actually have the most passive, advertisable, friendly voice that will not get you canceled. Like your voice is far from radical or extreme or in any way something that like would trigger people, because once you do that, you're hounded down, you're deplatformed, you're all these ways at which you are removed from the internet. So it's so funny to see a generation that where people claim to have a voice and to be the most politically engaged and to be the most open, while literally if you have an opinion that sways slightly different, you are attacked, so you actually cannot express yourself openly. But yeah, as I said, Gen Zs are feral, so
No, they'll figure it out. Like, I think we're the oldest Gen Zs, right? So
yeah.
they got time. They got time to figure things out.
Speaking about like figuring things out, was there a college class that helped you like really figure out shit for yourself in school? Yeah.
Not a class, a professor. Or a couple professor. I feel like Dr. Hoover and and the other professor that was helping me with my senior thesis. And also, I forget his name. He was in charge of helping St. Mary's students with the 4-1 program over at Notre Dame.
Ramsey.
Like he was a
Awani.
Frenchman. Ramsey.
Yes.
Yeah. I feel like those three really realized, like helped me realize that like I have the capability. Like I can actually do these things. And every time I think about those three professors, I get emotional because like the one with my senior thesis, he helped me raise the money for my last semester. You know,
Oh,
like
wow.
I think I needed $1,200 left because I did the fund. I don't know. Yeah. He even participated in my fund, right? Because
Did
I
I do?
needed that last semester. Yeah, yeah. But you didn't send me the money through GoFundMe. You sent me directly because you didn't want them to tax me. Yeah, but I was like, it was the deadline to pay for that semester. Because, I went into that semester, I had no money. I had no way of funding that semester. And it was my last semester. If it wasn't for that semester, there was no way I was going to go through the internship, and there was no way I was going to get a full-time offer because I wouldn't have a degree. And so when I did the fund, he's the one that it was the remaining, I think, 1,200 and like $50. I think it was something like that. And then I went to him because it was like my last senior thesis meeting, and I went to him and I'm like, he was like, yeah, you look kind of down. We're like, what's up? And I was like, oh, I need $1,200 to finish the semester, and that's all I'm like thinking about right now. By the time I left his office, that $1,200 was in the GoFundMe, and like it was just like those people that just
Yeah.
like they believe in you, and you don't even think that there are people out there that can do that for you.
Yeah.
Like people that have no, like they're not related to you. They just no, like it was those people, like, yeah, like they really just changed my life. Like they made me realize that I'm actually capable of anything.
Yeah.
And they made me realize that like I said earlier, you have to be your biggest advocate, but sometimes you have these silent fans in your background
Yeah.
that are there to push you forward and help you. And
Suc-
like I'm just forever grateful for them. Sorry,
No
this
fun.
did a tangent. But
No,
what about you?
No, like, Gaju, we need to succeed and blow up because, like, the math department in St. Mary's, we have to fund that thing to the teeth, like, to make sure, like, no African kids, especially coming through that program, have to go through what we went through. But the math department was the most supportive department ever. Like, I remember when I almost did not graduate and I was going to talk to Professor Hoover about all of this, and I was so stressed, and she literally just started crying in the office with me because she was like, I know how hard you've worked on this thing. And I remember when I came back, when everything was okay, and I reached, and one of the professors was like, looking back, I should have just adopted you, because if I had adopted you, you'd have gone free tuition. But it's only like a place like St. Mary's where they would have said that. So honestly, like, once this podcast does well, we should just like toss some money in to be like a fund to prevent like other African kids from having to go through that. Because like you said, something I've really learned about life is that if you fight hard enough, and other people will see you fighting and they'll help you push. Like, it's some kind of like theory. Like, when you there's this video where like a man just starts dancing randomly in a field, and then a second person just joins him, and then everybody ends up joining. It's like something like about human nature to like mimic something we see in front of us. And so when you see a young person fighting so hard to succeed, literally people around you will get inspired to help you. And like one of my former professors, who is like my mentor today, he's like the person who got me my first job out of college. So what happened as an international student, you have like 90 days to get a job. And I was like at day 80 something, right? I had tried everywhere, Airbnb, Microsoft, Twilio, everywhere. I'd always make it to the third round, but I was never a culture fit. And so literally, I started working at his company at day 87. 3 days before. Like, literally, our international student advisor was like, Chisom, you're like a cockroach. They can't seem to get rid of you. And I'm like, well, thank you. But like, I do think that like one thing I've made like a personal mission is that like when I do have enough money to like really pour into the math department at St. Mary's, because you want to keep such a pipeline open, and you also just want the professors to be paid more.
Yeah.
Like, from my understanding, the American higher education system is like built, like all the profits goes to administrators versus the actual professors who have been getting a smaller and smaller portion of the pie. So for me, it's like, and the professors are the backbone. And so one of my personal missions is like, when I do become rich, because I ain't trying to die broke, to really just invest a shit ton of money into St. Mary's. In fact, Gaju, we should blow so we can like start the engineering department there. We'll do our last names with Igwe and Gatera Building of Engineering. No, wait, what's Notre Dame's own Stinson Remick, right? It's two people's names together. Oh yeah, we can do that. We'll blow and do that.
Absolutely. I feel like they deserve it. And I mean, I guess like by the time we blow up, maybe like they'll be like in their like low, like end of their career. But I just want to give back to them specifically because wow, because it's like, it's actually insane to see people that have no relation to you, no, like they don't get anything out of helping help you the most. Like it just blew my mind. Like that's where I was like, yeah, like if these people that don't know me, never raised me, what believe in me, there's no reason for me not to believe in myself.
Yep.
Yeah.
And another thing is that like we just need to keep the cycle going. Like, and like I completely agree with you. My sister always tells me like the fact that like I stepped up to really help pay her tuition, she just knows she cannot give up. And you always want to keep that cycle going, especially for young African women. For like a young African girl to come into this world and to manifest herself fully is a revolutionary act. Like I don't try to talk like all these ultra liberal whatever people like. I think they're all a little crazy, but like I think the idea of like a young African woman coming into this world and saying, I'm going to, with the cards I've been dealt, I'm going to fight my hardest and make something out of it. It is literally revolutionary. So I do think that like in any way we can support and fund those initiatives, we should do so as much as
Absolutely.
possible.